Hello, and welcome to the 9th episode of the Chaplain's Assistance Promoter Pod, and I am your host, Gary. If this is your first listen, this is the podcast where I discuss what I'm experiencing in my world of G.I. Joe, be it comics, collecting, or even current events relating to G.I. Joe in some way, shape, or form. Also, I've been going through my collection. Sometimes I call it a big mess that needs to be cleaned up. But as I go through it, I take a closer look at something I'm pulling out, and I am a huge fan of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, so it should be something from my collection I'm reviewing, because if I don't have it, how can I look at it? And if you're listening to this podcast, please feel free to leave a review on your favorite podcatcher or website that you're listening on. We are available on Anchor FM, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and other podcatchers, and more coming all the time. The feedback helps the podcast grow and get better. It's all about the algorithm, kind of like how we make androids better, be it for battle or digging out of collapsed volcanoes, but in podcast form. And in this episode, I'm recording while in orbit. Now, crazy story, how I got up here. So one of the chaplains tasked me to take this crate of hymnals and load it on an aircraft. So I walk into the hangar, there's two. Hey, listen, he didn't tell me which aircraft, so I just, 50-50 shot, right? So I get on the aircraft, the hatchway locks, and next thing you know, I am feeling intense G-forces. And then a couple minutes later, I'm feeling weightless. It's like, what the heck is up with this? And then I realized what was going on. Now, I'm also stuck in the cargo hold with these little brown fluffy creatures that kind of remind me of my pet monster. Well, at least I found plenty of snacks and water, so I don't care what time it is. If any of us are hungry, we are eating. First order of business is I'm still patiently waiting for issue G.I. Joe 286 from IDW. Last episode, I kind of mentioned that I thought it was coming out in a few days. Well, that was my mistake, because usually when Tom Waltz, the editor of G.I. Joe, publishes preview panels, it's a sign that the book is done and it's getting ready to hit the shelf the following Wednesday. Well, I was wrong. So, still waiting for it. I can't wait. I'm recording this, it's still even not out on this Wednesday, so hopefully soon. Now, in my world of G.I. Joe and in current events, G.I. Joe is entering into the world of role-playing or tabletop gaming. Now, there is a trading card game coming out, also known as a deck builder, and this would be the second time G.I. Joe property is being integrated into that. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how large the local community will be, or even how this would be played online, but I did pre-order a deck builder set and hopefully play it. I do like trading card games. I played them a bit in my high school years playing Magic the Gathering, and I'm looking forward to playing another game like that. Video games, I haven't really played any since the Rise of Cobra for PS2, and I didn't even play it that much, and since then I don't really have a console, so I never played Operation Blackout. But I do have a smartphone, and I did play War on Cobra, and I played it daily until the last update. They changed the whole way the energy is replenished in the game, completely changed the base structure, and it just messed with my quote-unquote strategy. And it just stopped being fun, so I stopped playing that. So I haven't really been playing any G.I. Joe games. Now, the one I'm really looking forward to, especially because of the current renaissance with tabletop, is the RPG, the role-playing game for G.I. Joe. What gets me excited about this is with the online community being what it is, and the way I know role-playing games are structured. I have played them once or twice in the past. Never was a regular gamer. I'm familiar with the structure. I'm a beginner by any stretch of the imagination. So I am looking forward to this. There's going to be some character building, and when you build your character, when you roll your stats, and then you have to take your points and assign them to build your character, that is going to be really cool. And one of the things that I'm going to love about this is potentially, kit bashing a figure together. Because what better way than to make your own custom G.I. Joe is to have your own custom G.I. Joe figure. Much like Steel Brigade in the past, but I'm sure it's going to be called Steel Battalion now, with the Steel Brigade copyright being used now with Action Force by Voliverse. So here's the thing. So I'm an O-ring guy, so I will make if I decide to make my own custom avatar out of a figure, I'm going to probably take parts from O-ring guys. If I want to use a Steel Brigade helmet, Steel Brigades typically had the straight neck, which only turns left and right. There were Steel Brigade helmets that were used in 2005 on the Anti-Venom Task Force, which actually go over characters' heads. I also know that there are some red lasers that have the helmets that go over heads, like a Duke head or a Starduster head or Steeler head. And you can do either a swivel ball or a straight neck, and it's going to totally excite me into getting me, maybe pushing me into that realm of gaming. And what is more role-playing game anyway than playing with G.I. Joe and G.I. Joe figures? We used to make the rules as kids going along as we played, and now we'll have a little more structure as adults, and we can play even again, and it's still appropriate to bring a figure with you. In mail calls, I've been searching a lot on Mercari lately. I just do a general search for G.I. Joe, and it's not as populated as eBay. So a simple search like G.I. Joe lists everything from custom magnets to classified to modern to junk lots, you name it. And I've been looking for some holes, and I browse, and I look like, oh, this looks neat, that looks neat. The first thing I found was a pair of 2005 Tomax version 5. Now, this is the Tomax that came in the Toys R Us set, where one set came with Tomax and one set came with Zaymot. So the price was reasonable for an exclusive figure from that era. And it's like, okay, well, it's a pair of figures. The Zaymot used the same body as the Tomax. So in my logic, I'm like, hey, I'll just get a set of 1985 heads and swap them in. They come in. I also went out and I bought some nice Tomax and Zaymot heads and had them shipped in, because I didn't want to take apart my nice Tomax and Zaymot, and my rough Tomax and Zaymot were really rough. So I got the heads in, and I unscrewed it, swapped the heads, and the next thing you know, the 1985 head is way loose in the 2005 body. I was kind of bummed. I was looking for this Sunbow-esque version of Tomax and Zaymot. I could figure out a more executive way to display them, and it was just bummed. I put it down, put it off the side for a few days, maybe a week. It's been a few weeks. I'm again searching through Mercari, and the next thing you know, Zaymot pops up, and it's like, okay, at this day and age, if you see it and it's a reasonable price, or even if it's a little high on the reasonable side, which it was, I was like, okay, boom, I got to get Zaymot. Now, mind you, I haven't looked at them online. I haven't really done a lot of research, but I was like, okay, cool, I want this set. And I got Zaymot, and a few days later, Zaymot comes in. Here's the thing about mid-2000s Hasbro. They look cool in the package. They set your expectations of what you're getting. Here it is. I'm going to get the Sunbow look, and even the IDW Cobra series look that, really made it, their evil corporate guys, it's like, yes, I'm going to have the pair. I don't need to worry about swapping heads. And I get it. And because it's mid-2000s Hasbro, and you think it looks really cool in the package, and then you open the package, or in this case, the box, because it was already loose, you get let down. And I'll tell you why. Where his scar is. Now, these molds have been reused, so the scar line in Xamot's mold has kind of, at least on my figure, is kind of washed out. It's nowhere near as prominent as it used to be. But that would be okay. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, hey, at least they painted the scar on Xamot. Well, it's a pink blotch that looks like a Band-Aid over Xamot's scar. I got it. I looked at it, and I was, the wind was blown out of my sails. I just put it down. It was it did not live up to the expectation I built up for it inside my head. And now it's just another figure in the collection. And while it will look good from a distance, it's not something that I will ever bring to the forefront in a display. And it's going to go into a container, and it's just going to be put off to the side till a day I want to set up a display like that. And that's going to be further down the road because I kind of was excited. And that's my quick take on the 2005 Crimson Twins from the Toys R Us exclusive line. Alright, so this week we are looking at the Cobra Stellar Stiletto, which makes sense because I'm in orbit, and maybe I'll find a way down using this spacecraft. The Cobra Stellar Stiletto, per the box, can streak through the atmosphere at Mach 20. That is crazy. It has laser guns and deep space missiles to blast the G.I. Joe Defiant Space Complex out of orbit. And that's from the box. Mach 20. 20 times the speed of sound. That's 747 miles per hour times 20. And just rounding it to 750 and 7,500, that's 15,000 miles an hour. That's really fast. I don't know how you get up to 15,000 miles per hour, but I don't know if you can do it in an atmosphere. Maybe the cold vacuum of space. Now, I'm looking at this today because I have a few of these, and I did go through them not so long ago. And I have a boxed, semi-sealed contents. I don't have all the contents. Cobra Stellar Stiletto, along with a couple other ones. And this one is a toy that I have a lot of play with from my youth. It makes it easy for me to pick it out. This was one of my few quote-unquote aircraft that I used to play with. And it used to do dive bombs and everything, even though obviously it's not practical. For 1988, when this came out, and I'm 8 years old, this thing was fantastic. It was the right price for me to be able to get my mom to buy it and bring it home and put it together and have loads of fun with it. It came with the Star Viper. The Star Viper is a Strato Viper that has even more surgery to enhance him. The electromagnetic shunt implanted in his brain on the right side, to stimulate him during the high G maneuvers. And at 20 times the speed of sound, I'm sure those maneuvers had tons and tons and tons and tons of G's. Now, the Star Viper was molded in black with gold and red painted accents. Typical of gold paint is it's subject to crazy paint rub. And I will even tell you this, my sealed Star Viper, I'll just qualify that. I don't have too many sealed figures, But when I do, it's because they were from my childhood collection. I just wanted to have a sealed example from childhood. That thing has gold paint rub in the bubble. That's how fragile this gold paint is. The red visor, the red paint, very durable. But the gold paint, don't even touch it. It's just crazy. He has this X cross with like a little circle in the center for, like, you could say it's like a harness latch. He has gold gloves, and he has gold down the side of his thighs to his holsters. Well, one holster, one knife on his left thigh and the gun on the right. And he's just a solid pilot. The helmet looks good. Everything ties well together. A great pilot figure. Now, when I was talking about the Night Raven a few weeks ago, the Star Viper didn't come to mind, but actually the Star Viper fits with the Night Raven because it's a similar paint scheme, and also he is an evolution of the Strato Viper. So why wouldn't he be part of the Night Raven program? He came from the Night Raven program. Probably a great choice for the drone, seeing as how he's built to withstand Mach 20. Now, the cool thing is, I don't know if anybody out there in listener land has bought the Creating G.I. Joe books, or 3 3/4 Joe by Dan Klingensmith. In volume 3, he actually goes into the Cobra, Stellar Stiletto, and the Star Viper. And the Star Viper was designed by Dave Dorman. And some of the sketches in there, if you get the book, I recommend this book. If you're a huge fan of G.I. Joe and the nuts and bolts of how it came about, it's definitely a must read. And what I like about the Stiletto side, and we're going to get to that now, is it shows all the mock-ups and the sketches of essentially how they built the Stellar Stiletto. And that's really cool for me. I really love the technical side of building a toy from design to, in your hands. Now, while Dave Dorman did the design of the Star Viper, it was David Kunitz that did the design of the Stellar Stiletto. The Stellar Stiletto overall design is a spaceship. And as part of it being a spaceship, if you're in the cold vacuum of space, by and large, you don't need to worry about aerodynamics. So the first thing you do when you pick up the Stellar Stiletto, you notice its red color. It's black and silver accents with the dark gray nose cone and almost black tail fin, the pivoting tail fin, and the nozzles. You got the silver hoses for the aft and starboard engines, with the same silver being used for the laser gun and the 4 missiles. You notice that there is exposed portions of this ship. Part of it was because it's in space, so it doesn't need to be, if you're in space, as long as you are launching in space and you're not entering in the atmosphere with this, it doesn't need to be covered. Maybe it does, but it's not, you're not worried about atmospheric friction. So it's kind of cool that it's open. Now, remember, when I bought this at 8 years old, it didn't matter. It was just cool to see the technical side and the detail that was put into these engines. And the front portion was actually, one of his inspirations was the hot rods of the cars from the 1930s and early 1940s. It was common to leave the engine bay exposed to show off the V8 engine you put into the car. He crammed a lot of tasty details in, and what that does now for me, in retrospect, is it really flips on my creative side of my brain and my model building side of my brain, because these details just are screaming for a little touch up. And if you go online and you do like a Google image search for Stellar Stiletto custom, there are some absolutely awesome customs out there. You pop open the canopy, the clear canopy. The character or the Star Viper will kind of lays back and he kind of looks, because they don't really have the neck articulation to look straight ahead. He's kind of, looking out, semi, reclined. And they there's a decal for a little targeting monitor where if you could sit up and look at the instrument gauges, they're molded in, and there's even little needles. If you look really closely, there's little needles in each one of the 5 dials that are on the right. It's just more little touches like that which make this toy, which was really not one of the more expensive. It's a small ship, fits one figure. There's no pegs for somebody to stand on, which is great for me. It adds to it to me. Sometimes less is more. It just adds to the realistic effect, but it also adds for that little custom touches that you want to do. And then you flip it over, right? You flip it over and you look at the belly. There's 2 essentially, fuel drums on the bottom, part of the same mold. And again, this thing, the more I look at the Stellar Stiletto, ever since I also searched, the pictures and I saw customs, to me, it's just screaming for little touches here and there, especially as we, move more into space commercially. It's just, you're seeing this more and more in the media. It's just firing off little things that you just want to touch up here and there. Because when you flip this over, not only do you see these belly tanks, but you also see the bottom of the engine underneath the wings. And it's nice and symmetrical. The laser gun is nice. It has, one large cannon with, maybe 2 small cannons on the side, or 2 sights on the side. And it turns, left and right. And, the 4 missiles on the wings, they look fine. You got 2 smaller ones and 2 larger ones. When I was a kid, the 2 smaller ones were bombs because I didn't have any space vehicles. I just had land, sea, and air. It works. It's just, as a whole, this little spacecraft, which is part of the whole space mission aspect of G.I. Joe, where G.I. Joe went to in 1987, it works. As part of, for my collection, I have multiple. As I'm going through, I have a couple really nice ones. I have the one that the contents aren't sealed. It's missing the canopy, but I have the box, and I got it for a literal song years ago. It's part of that. But I also have 1 or 2 that are in less than perfect condition that I do, again, my custom side is starting to scratch, the itch is there. I'm still going through just the toys in general before I start yet another project, but it's nice to be stimulated and to do more stuff with this hobby, what G.I. Joe does. Is the Stellar Stiletto something that should be in every collection? I don't think so. I think if you want G.I. Joe Go to Space, you definitely have it. If you take the space stuff out, if in your collection you're like, I am not having a Defiant, and I get it, that thing's huge. Even if you have the Crusader shuttle, that takes up a fair amount of room. So if you don't have those, or you don't have a desire for those in your collection, you probably don't have a desire for the Stellar Stiletto, or even an Astro Viper or Target. But it is on its own, especially when I bring back the childhood sensibilities and the childhood sense of imagination. I love it. 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 To me, for a budget vehicle, it's a top tier vehicle. The design is a home run. The execution's an absolute home run. Everybody involved deserves a pat on the back. It was one of my favorite toys of my childhood. And as I look at other toys from the G.I. Joe line, it absolutely belongs with them because of the quality of the detailing that it brought to the table in 1988 and from 82 to 94. It's just one of the best. I would be remiss in saying that they didn't reuse the Cobra Stellar Stiletto for the G.I. Joe Star Brigade and later in the line, and molded in white with a spring-fired gun in the front instead of the little laser cannon. Because it's white, I think white, at least from my model building experience when I used to build model kits, probably lends itself better to painting and custom touches. However, when I decide to finally do a custom one of these things, I'm probably just going to prime and paint the red one, because red is the color of the Stellar Stiletto. And the other thing too is, well, red might be like, hey, red in space, it's kind of going to stand out. And it really doesn't, because red, as things get darker, your eye can't perceive the color as well as other colors in the spectrum. And red is one of the primary colors of Cobra, so it belongs absolutely. And that concludes this episode of the Chaplain's Assistant's Motor Pod. If you've liked what you've listened to, you can follow me on social media at Chaplain Joe Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Or you can send me an email at iggaryv@gmail.com. Also, the executives behind Extensive Enterprises would like me to remind you that the Chaplain's Assistant's Motor Pod is part of the Pint Comics extended family. We might be strange, but we aren't estranged, and you can easily find all of their info on www.pintocomics.com. Now, with all that out of the way, I may have made a mistake with the jalapeno Cheetos found on this rocket ship. Those furry creatures got big and mean. Maybe they don't like spicy food. After I fed them, and there's these angry British and Australian zookeepers trying to keep them in line. I'm just going to stay here quietly and avoid all this fuss and just play innocent if I'm discovered. Until next time, this has been the Chaplain's Assistant's Motor Pod, where we deliver the Joe missiles to the masses. See ya!